The PlayStation Drive is fueled by patrons over at patreon.com/YumiCapri, and we want to thank all of our patrons, including our Capremium producers, Dallas Ford, Drew Agnew from the House of Mario podcast, Jace Baldridge from twitch.tv/Baka Ridge, Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team, and Jonathan Brown. You can find him over at youtube.com/GamingPurpleMonkey. Our platinum producers, Brian Scott, Robbie Bobby Miller, and Trucker Sloth. And our gold members, Argo, Brennan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Emily O'Kelly, Heather Boney, James Johnson, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Benji Kong, Marcus O'Neill, RJ Kern, Dano, Skinny Matt, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, Fulio Fuji, and Xavier Reyes. Thank you so much for all of your support. Now, on with the show. Hey everyone, it's me, Ryan Turford. I'm in my house, and you're listening to the most PlayStation-rific podcast on the internet. It's the PlayStation Drive. I'm on a Discord call with my friend Matt Sawinski, and on our journey today, oh my god, all the PlayStation characters are coming to a bunch of games, and Ubisoft has a bunch of weird announcements, and I played Psychonauts too, so jump on into the PlayStation Drive. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ow!
Hello, my good friend Ryan. What's going on?
I am doing well. How are you doing on this fine Thursday, Matt?
I'm doing swell. There's too many games coming out right now. There's too much cool stuff going on. I wish we had more time, Ryan. I just wish we had more time.
It is certainly that time of year where like everything is deciding to come out. Again, we thought we got through last month okay, because there were so many new releases last month, but, never mind. July has a lot of cool stuff going on too, especially because I know you had been pretty busy last week because you guys were covering PAX, like the virtual PAX, like all week too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been busy.
Yeah. We saw some cool games. We talked to some awesome developers. So we have like a bunch of content over on our YouTube there. And it's been busy, but I mean, I just never expected the end of July to be such a busy time for new games, but I guess here we are. The whole year is just one busy season now.
It never ends. Well, this is the PlayStation Drive where we talk about PlayStation all the time. We should clean the garage a little bit because we're not actually driving because we're hanging out in our driveway at the moment. If you like what we do and you want to support the show, of course, you can subscribe to us on your podcast feed of choice. If you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we will read it during this section of the show. We don't have it to read today, but in the future, if one comes up, this is where we would read it. However, if you want to see our beautiful faces and you want to go view the video version of the podcast, go over to youtube.com/YumiCapri. That's right. We've got a custom URL now because we've no longer have the PlayStation Drive YouTube channel. We actually closed it down because we actually moved all of the Yumi Capri shows under one umbrella over on youtube.com/YumiCapri. So it's the official home of the PlayStation Drive, the Xbox Drive, the RPG Cave, as well as audio versions of We the Gamercast, as well as the Nintendo Drive. So you can actually check out all of our podcasts there. We have content pretty much coming out almost every day, at least 5 days a week. If it's just the normal podcast, as well as big special one-offs like the Extra Miles and stuff like that. So youtube.com/YumiCapri. We would love and appreciate y'all if you subscribe. Not only that, but we have a contest going right now where, and this isn't PlayStation related, but if once we hit 500 subscribers, we're giving away a year of Xbox Game Pass. If we hit that milestone, we're getting pretty close. We're about 150 subscribers away. We will give one lucky subscriber 1 year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. In addition to that, we might have other contests coming up. We do have a Space Jam controller giveaway coming up sometime soon, but we don't have all the details about that yet. But that'll be coming out soon, as well as some other stuff. So look out for that on our Twitter channels. Just follow me on Twitter at Ryan Turford, and you'll get all the deets about that stuff there. Last but not least, if you want early access to this and all of our shows, of course, patreon.com/YumiCapri is how you go do that. You throw a little tip in the old tip jar, and out comes content, just like a content vending machine, if you will. You get early access to this show as well as all of our other shows, as well as exclusive content like the Yumi Capri podcast, as well as the Patreon podcast for Patrons Podcast. That's a mouthful. And last thing I want to plug in, this will segue us nicely, I think, into the playlist, Matt, is that I played a little game last week that's not out yet, that is not out for another month and a half, but I got to play it early. I got to play Psychonauts 2. And for those who've been listening on the podcast feed, you might have noticed a weird episode of The Extra Mile just pop up on Monday, where I basically gave you guys a preview of Psychonauts 2. Of course, even though most people are associating the game with Xbox because Double Fine is owned by Xbox, we put this on the PlayStation Drive feed as well because the game's also coming to PlayStation 4 as well, and it'll run on PlayStation 5 in backwards compatible mode. So we wanted to make sure you guys heard that. So, of course, if you want to know my full thoughts about Psychonauts 2, you can head out over to the podcast feed and go listen to my full preview. I talk about it for about 30 minutes without spoiling the game. So if you are on Media Blackout, but you want to hear like kind of some thoughts about the game, of course, head on over to the podcast feed and kind of listen to my preview there. All right, with all that out of the way, let's grab our 8 tracks, pop them in. It is time for the playlist, and let's get into the games we've been playing. And before I go to Psychonauts 2, because I want to give my voice a little bit of a rest, Matt, let's talk about what you played this week.
I finally, as I promised last week, jumped back into Final Fantasy XIV, and oh my god, was it immediately overwhelming all over again. I'll never forget the first time I started that game and just how much there was going on. And like, I haven't played probably in about 6 months or so. So it definitely took me a little bit to get, reacquainted, to set up my hotbars back up. Because of course I was playing on the PlayStation 5 and a lot of my settings didn't carry over. So I had to refigure things out and relearn how to start playing my Astrologian again. I ran a couple dungeons so far and I've done a bunch of fates. Just trying to get my Astrologian up to level 50 because I'm currently sitting at 48 and I want to continue at the main story, but I can't until I get back up to 50. But it's just, so last night I was playing by myself. I was just trying to, wet my whistle a little bit, get reacquainted a little bit more. And I was running around doing some fates because I already did my leveling. And I was getting my butt kicked. Like I was in an area at 48, all the area, like, the quest stuff around there was at level 49. But something that I just love about this community, somebody saw I was in trouble, ran over, we partied up, then another person ran over, the 3 of us partied up, and for the next hour, with 2 random people I've never spoken to or even spoken to at all, we ran around doing stuff together. And it's just like, it's those little moments in this game that kind of like, hey, you guys want to do something? Yeah, sure. And it's so special, Ryan. This is so cool. And it's on fire right now. It's doing so well. I saw you were also in Final Fantasy XIV. How was your time with the game?
I talked about it on the show last week. I'm kind of hooked again. The Square Enix has definitely got me going. Again, I'm just at this point, since I have almost every class at level 80. At this point, I'm kind of just going around and collecting old stuff that I never collected before. Like I'm currently doing. I'm currently soloing the Binding Quails of Bahamut, which was one of the very first raids in Final Fantasy XIV Realm Reborn. And there's some really difficult fights to kind of solo in there, but it has some awesome rewards, so that's why I'm doing it. I'm also going back and getting a bunch of mounts that I didn't have before, as well as I'm kind of leveling up like 2 of the classes I'm kind of missing. So I'm having a lot of fun playing Final Fantasy XIV again. And like you said, the community has been amazing for Final Fantasy XIV, even with the influx of players, because Yoshi P and the team at Final Fantasy XIV had to make a statement this week about there being so many new players that they basically had to put in some new limits, such as the ability to get timed out. So if you sit idle for 20 minutes, they just boot you from the server, because there are so many people playing this game now. Like I'm going into towns that like traditionally didn't have like anyone in them before, and there's just like hundreds of people just hanging out. Like not just Limsa Lemoyne, because that was usually the one city where everyone would hang out. But like if you go to like Gridania or Mordona or like some of the other like smaller towns, like there's just so many people around, and everyone's super nice, which is awesome. And you'll also run into veteran people like me who haven't really stopped playing since the game came out, like since 2.0. And like, I'm always happy to help new players. Like to your point, like if I see someone who needs trouble, like as I'm going and doing other things, I'll go help them. And if they want to party up and go do other stuff, that's kind of what I do. It sometimes that spirals into like 5 or 6 hours of doing stuff, like doing dungeon runs or whatever else we want to do. Especially like if you're leveling a character like an Astrologian, like a healer, like your best option actually probably is to just run dungeons with people and rather than fates, because then you just get XP just so much quicker. And you've got the healer queue, which is pretty much instant now with so many new players. So
yeah. I was just trying to kind of reacquaint myself with my abilities, because I was kind of like, I went into one dungeon and I got us wiped once just because I was like, oh my god, where did I map everything all over again? But I have a quick question, Ryan, before we move off Final Fantasy 14, because I have made what some people are saying is a bit of a stupid proclamation here. I committed to reaching the end of Shadowbringers by the time Endwalker comes out. And just like I said, I'm just the beginning of Heaven's Ward.
Yep.
Can I do this, Ryan? Is this possible?
I think it's totally doable. I mean, for starters, anyone who started the game from level 1 and was doing A Realm Reborn, I still think you could do the whole thing before before Endwalker comes out too. Like, I think it's totally. It just depends on how much time you want to put into it, and how much time you have kind of available to play Final Fantasy 14, because it is admittedly a bit of a time sink, but at the same time the expansion content is shorter than the base game, because the base game, A Realm Reborn, to complete the main scenario quests and all the side quests associated with it, takes about 30 to 40 hours to finish, but then Heaven's Ward and then Stormblood and Shadowbringers each take about 20 hours to finish. So if you've got about 60 hours to spare between now and November, you can do it. For sure.
Sure.
I mean, again, 60 hours sounds like a long time, but 60 hours over 6 months isn't actually that bad. So
that's like 1/3 of a Persona game.
It's
no
totally
problem.
doable. But I mean, it can also go faster too if you're playing with friends and whatnot as well. So, or depending on what job you're playing as well. So yeah, absolutely. Anyone who's out there who's getting started, don't feel like it's too late to get started. In fact, we have actually a video coming out about Final Fantasy 14 on how to get started and why this is the best time to get started this weekend. So you can look out for that on the YouTube channel, as well as the RPG Cave feed as well. All right, we should probably talk about this other game, Cris Tales, because we both played it. I honestly didn't play it all that much, and I don't know how much you really got into it. I only really played like the first hour, which is essentially like the same section from the demo. So I mean, for the most part, I haven't really gotten too far. But where are you at in Cris Tales, Matt?
I'm about 3 or 4 hours in so far, so not too much farther than you. And there's a lot of things that I love about this game, but there's a couple things that I'm just waiting to see how they develop. Admittedly, it's very, very early on in what is basically a RPG style game. So like there was things like, your first heal spell takes a little bit for you to get, just little things along the way that, like, because it's set up, I'm kind of giving it time. So a few things bugging me. Excuse me. I wish your run speed was faster, especially with the amount of running and backtracking that I've done so far. I just wish that the character moved a little bit quicker to kind of help facilitate the flow. But that's like a minor problem right now. It's just the combat is really interesting, and I'm really curious to see how else it'll develop shifting between the past and the future and the present, along with, like, man, this is probably one of the most graphically stunning games I've ever seen. Like, it's incredibly beautiful and like fully voice acted. It's just really, really well done. I am really enjoying it so far. We are actually reviewing it, so once I finish, we'll have a review go up on our channel as well. But what about you, Ryan? What are your feelings about the first hour so far?
I played the demo last year during the Xbox Games Showcase, because they actually had a whole demo event last year on Xbox. There were a bunch of demos, and I hadn't actually heard anything about Cris Tales until that demo event, and I just randomly saw it pop up in the store, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting thumbnail with the artwork. Maybe I'll try out this demo, and I was blown away by the demo for all the things you talked about. Like, the combat system's like super interesting. Like, it's very unique and different from like any other RPG I've ever played, especially with the time travel mechanics and how time travel works in the game is like so much different than like pretty much any other time travel game I've ever played. Like, because most of the time it's like, oh, we're just going to go to the past and you've got an extra map to go to. And then the future is different as well. Whereas this, you're like shifting between them all the time, which is just super interesting. And just the art style is absolutely gorgeous. Again, I haven't played it that long because, again, I played it yesterday when it came to Xbox Game Pass. I bought the collector's edition of it as well, which I unboxed on the YouTube Pre channel. So if you actually want to go see what's in the collector's edition for the game, you can go check out my unboxing there. And I just had a really good time for the first hour. Again, I haven't run into a lot of the stuff that you're talking about with some of the backtracking, because again, I'm not far enough into the game, admittedly, to do a lot of that stuff. So I can imagine that being a little bit of a problem, because you do admittedly move through kind of the sections a little bit slowly. So I can imagine if you're doing a ton of backtracking, that would be a problem. So I'm just excited to play more of this game and maybe talk about it in the weeks to come once I've played more of it, because so far so good. I'm really enjoying my time with it. But again, I'm not much farther than where the demo kind of leaves off. So I'm just looking to see what else this game has to offer. And of course, before we go to breaking news, Matt, I should touch on the other game I played that last week, which we talked about earlier, Psychonauts 2. Again, my full preview's up, as I mentioned earlier. But I wanted to quickly touch on it because I want to kind of remind people, don't sleep on this game. I think that this game has the potential to be really, really awesome. So I played about 6 hours of Psychonauts 2. So I basically played like the first 4 hours of the game, as well as 2 additional later game levels to equate to 4 brain puzzles, as they kind of called it in the game, where essentially the whole point of the Psychonauts is you're going into different people's brains because you work for the Psychonauts agency to basically either solve their problems or trying to stop criminal acts before they happen, essentially. So you're going to people's brains, of course, which of course leads to some really weird and kind of crazy level design and visuals. And of course, if you played Psychonauts 1, you kind of already know what I'm referring to. Going into people's brains gets a little bit weird. But of course, it's a Double Fine game, so you're expecting weird when you come into this game. But one of the things I noticed right away from playing this game is just how much improved the platforming and the combat are from the first game, because those were the 2 things that I really found revisiting the game earlier this year for a podcast, because we did a whole episode about Psychonauts on the Xbox Live earlier this year, was just how much improved the combat and gameplay was, because it doesn't really hold up from the first game, but it just was fun to play this game. It was just a ton of fun to play Psychonauts 2, and I'm really looking forward to people getting their hands on the full game. Again, I don't want to talk specifics or anything like that, because I know people like me, for example, were kind of on media blackout for this game. I personally didn't want to know anything about it before it came out, and the trailers actually do, for example, give it a little bit too much information, I think, about the game. So definitely, if you're interested in this game and you don't want to find out more of it, obviously I wouldn't just watch the trailers. I would just check out the game when it comes out. But it's on. Sorry, go ahead.
So I have a quick question, because I have no affinity for the series whatsoever. Every time I saw the original when it came out, and something about the art style didn't really click with me. For somebody who like me, who's never touched Psychonauts, and what is it about it that has you so excited?
First off,
as a new player, why should I jump in?
3D platformers like Mario Odyssey or Astrobot, I think you're going to really dig the platforming. It is more on the puzzle side, so you have a lot of platforming puzzles to kind of solve kind of along the way, either using the environment or you have to find certain objects. Because there's a bajillion collectibles in this game as well. It kind of reminded me of Banjo-Kazooie or Donkey Kong 64 or one of those older rare games where there's just so many things to collect. But even though I think the art style might be a turnoff for some people, the one thing that I think really stood out about this game as well is the humor and the writing and the dialogue, where I think there were a lot of laugh out loud funny moments in this game. I think that there's almost this dry wit to it that you kind of see across all of Tim Schafer's games, whether you're going all the way back to Grim Fandango back on the PC to even their more modern games like Brutal Legend or something like Costume Quest, I think had some really great writing. And that's been true across almost every Double Fine game, and it's been true here from everything I've seen from Psychonauts 2. So I think, bottom line, if you like platformers that feel just really fun to play and go around the environment and have a ton of exploratory elements, and also it's just giving you a unique look, because this game there's nothing else like this game out there for sure, especially because there's some really cool camera tricks that they do, such as you're running along ceilings and stuff like that, or you're running down a hallway and then the hallway stretches, kind of like you've seen in a million movies but you never see in games. I think they do some really awesome stuff with the visual design in this that, again, it's like no other game out there. So I definitely think it is worth a look. On PlayStation side, it's a little bit of a harder sell, obviously, because you'd be going into it, blind paying full price for it at this point. Whereas on Xbox, we have the benefit of it being on Game Pass. So, I mean, if you have Game Pass, I would say that that's probably the best place to play it if you don't mind playing it on Xbox or PC. But even if you didn't like the original Psychonauts, or if it maybe turned you off because of either the visuals or something else, I do think this one is definitely worth a look, because even if you like just the mechanics of it, I think it'll be worth playing alone just for that. So there you go. That's Psychonauts 2 again. If you want to know more, again, go listen to my preview. But we're 18 minutes in the show. We should probably get to the news. So let's slam this conversation. It is time for some breaking news. And we got some news stories this week. Most of these actually came out this morning, which I'm very thankful for, because otherwise it would have been a very slow news week, Matt. But let's talk about Aloy coming to Genshin Impact. So she's going to become a temporary playable character in Genshin Impact, starting with update 2.1, which I don't know when that's coming out off the top of my head. I think that's coming out soon. But essentially, they showed off Aloy's character model. She's like this anime version of Aloy, which I think is like super cool. Like it's a very different look for the character, and I'm actually maybe excited to actually reinstall Genshin Impact, because it was a game that I actually fell off of when it came out. Like I just kind of like, I started playing it and I just didn't really get into it, but maybe playing as Aloy is maybe the push I need maybe to go back to this game. But what do you think about Aloy coming to Genshin Impact, Matt? First of all, did you see kind of the new character model for Aloy that they have going on?
Yeah, she looks absolutely adorable. I love the style that Genshin Impact has. I'm the same as you, Ryan. I started playing it and I really enjoyed what I was playing, but because I was playing on mobile, I kind of fell off just faster than I should have. It seems like the tentative release date for 2.1, I believe it is the end of August. So it's not too far out. So I think similarly to you, this might be what it takes, especially because they just announced that they have cross saves and everything starting to function as well. So if you want to play on PlayStation and hop onto your PC or hop onto your phone, and if you're going somewhere, that's totally available now. So I think this might be what also brings me back to the game, because I love a lot of what Genshin is doing, and it doesn't seem too microtransaction heavy. So it's definitely something that I'm going to give another whirl, because I love a lot about it, and I think I just need some more time with it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think that, again, it's the type of game that I know, like my brother Kyle is like super addicted to it. He tells me all the time, like he's been playing it kind of nonstop ever since it came out. And I know that there's a lot of fans for Genshin Impact, so it's really cool to kind of see it get some more support. And I think like this is maybe the push for someone like me who maybe didn't give it another chance. So I'm excited to reinstall it as well. So next up, speaking of PlayStation crossovers with other games, Ratchet and Clank skins are coming to Fall Guys sometime soon. Again, I don't know. Let me check the blog post. I don't think this is out yet.
August.
I think it's coming to August. There you go. So it's coming to August. Again, I haven't played Fall Guys either in like forever. Like back, for those who have been following us for a while over here at Yumi Capri, we used to play Fall Guys like every weekend when it came out, but then we kind of just fell off with the game. So I don't know if this is the type of thing like Aloy coming to Genshin that's maybe going to make me reinstall this, but I might reinstall Fall Guys to like at least try and earn the skins and then kind of claim them, and so they're kind of in my Fall Guys library forever, just in case I ever go back to this game. But what do you think about Ratchet and Clank coming to Fall Guys, Matt?
So just to clarify my own correction, so Ratchet is going to be available from July 26th to August 1st, and Clank will be August 6th to August 15th. Similarly to you, Ryan, I played a ton of Fall Guys when it came out. Like me and my partner Senna, like we'd be trading off controllers, like we'd played for hours upon hours on end. Like I actually maxed out like the Fall Guys pass, the battle pass type thing in the first season. I was just so hopelessly addicted to it. And then when season 2 rolled around, I fell off for some reason. But I think this might be, again, the push that I need to go back. I at least want to go get those skins and hold on to them. And this is just such a fun party game. And it's just such a fun way to spend an hour playing. So I think this is also going to be the reason I go back as well, because I love these collaborations, and they've done a lot with different characters. But this might be the one that I kind of have to jump back in and grab.
It's a good reason, even just to hop in, earn those skins, and even if you want to delete it and put the game down from there, like, it's totally fine. So I think that's pretty cool. All right, next up, starting today, PlayStation 5 users will be able to get a 6-month free trial of Apple TV Plus. All you have to do is simply sign into the Apple TV Plus app on your PlayStation 5, and you will be given a 6-month free trial of the service. This is exclusive to PlayStation 5 owners, so if you have a PlayStation 4, unfortunately this isn't going to work. But if you have a PlayStation 5, you can jump on there and get some free TV, I guess. I don't know. For starters, I'm not really a huge TV person, and I haven't really looked into ever picking up Apple TV Plus. I've never really tried Apple TV Plus, and I don't know if it's a service for me in particular, just because, again, I mostly watch anime or I watch movies. And even then, I those are kind of limited. So I don't know if this is for me, but what do you think about this, Matt? Do you actually watch a lot of TV? I guess we've never really talked about like TV streaming services on the show before.
Yeah, I do like TV. For me, we use a lot of Netflix because we watch a lot of Korean dramas and a bunch of other random stuff, along with, I'm the same way as you. If I'm not watching a Korean drama or anime, I'm not watching too much unless it's something that really catches my attention. So this excites me just because the second season of Ted Lasso is starting tomorrow. On Friday the 23rd, and I absolutely adore that show. And we perhaps were watching the first season through a little bit of a sketchier method. So that's enough for me to jump on this 6 months free. If you haven't watched Ted Lasso, it is one of the most wholesome shows I've ever watched, and it's about a football coach that moves to England to coach a soccer team, and obviously a lot of things kind of fall out. It has Jason Sudeikis, and it is just one of the most chaotically good shows I've ever seen. It just kind of warms your heart through and through. And that doesn't mean that it's saccharine. That doesn't mean that there's, there isn't moments of, crappy things happening, but just the way that the show handles everything is just very kind. So if you do have a PlayStation 5, I would tell you to sign up just to at least watch that. I've also heard good things about The Morning Show and some other shows that are on Apple TV, but Ted Lasso is the biggest reason that I'm excited about this, because that show is just so good. And I mean, why not? It's free. I'll sign up for the 6 months. I'll probably cancel it after that, but it's why not? It's there.
Yeah, honestly, I'm probably the same as you. Even though I probably won't end up watching anything on it, yeah, I'll have the 6 months because it's free. Like, why not, right? And then I'll just remove I'll cancel the subscription immediately once I sign up, essentially. So, yeah, so there you go. Apple TV Plus is there if you would like to see it. Next up, we got 2 Ubisoft stories that are going to go back to back here, starting with both Riders Republic and Rainbow Six Extraction have been delayed. Riders Republic will now launch on October 28th, and Rainbow Six Extraction will launch sometime in January of 2022. Now, we talked about this on the Xbox Drive yesterday, both Sean and I, but I'm curious to see what your opinion is on this, Matt. First of all, I think it's good that they're just taking the time with these games to make them great. I'm curious to know how much polish is really going to go into Riders Republic in a month, because it's really only being delayed by a month here, especially because I think the October time frame for this game, I think, is going to be a little bit rougher for it, especially because you've got Forza Motorsport coming out like 2 weeks later, as well as it's just a busy time for games at that point. So I think a lot of people might overlook this one. And then Rainbow Six Extraction, I'm curious what's going to happen with this, because they're saying January 2022, but this move doesn't exude confidence that if they're not putting an exact date on this like they're doing with Riders Republic. So it's possible it just gets delayed beyond this point, possibly. Like, that game just might not be ready. But what do you think about this topic, Matt?
Yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. I'm glad that they're doing it, only because if those games need more time, take the time that you need. I'm actually kind of curious about Riders Republic. That last E3 showcase that we got from them kind of sold me on the game. So I'm hoping that this extra month is just kind of more general bug fixing and making sure their servers are ready, because it will be an online game. So I'm excited to check it out when it comes up. And similarly to you, the lack of a hard release date on Extraction doesn't make me too confident that it's actually going to come out in January. I'm not a big fan of Siege, but this being kind of like your co-op Left 4 Dead style shooter makes me much more interested. Again, like, when these games are ready, I'll check them out when it's time. I'm not really too upset about delays, especially given the world's situation over the last year. Any delays that are happening, I'm just kind of like, all right, whatever. Well, it's right. It'll be ready when it's ready. So when it's done, I'll check it out.
So yeah, I'm excited to see more of these. And just like you, like, I was really run over by Riders Republic as well. Like, that's a game I'm really excited to play. It just might be harder for me to maybe justify playing it the day it comes out with it coming in October. So I think that's more the problem more than
Yeah.
anything, especially because I know we're probably going to be pretty busy over here as well, both you and I with our respective channels. So there you go. And next up with another Ubisoft story, Ubisoft have also announced a new free-to-play first-person shooter called Tom Clancy's X Defiant with a capital X, aiming to combine the universes of Ghost Recon, The Division, Splinter Cell, and more. A PC beta will launch on August 5th, and it will come sometime later to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. So the internet has lots of opinions about this game, Matt, but before I talked about what I talked about yesterday with Sean, what did you think about this? I want to know what your take on this game.
I have really weird feelings about this game. It exists, cool. I just don't know if anything outside of Splinter Cell is, enough of a draw for me to want to jump in to be like, oh, I get to play as these characters. I just don't really have any feelings towards the Ghost Recon or Division or any of the other shooter Ubisoft titles as a character draw. The game itself looks fine. Another free-to-play shooter in this kind of space. I'm kind of curious to see how heavy the microtransactions are going to be, because I think that's what will make or break it. Valorant has had a huge launch, and that's been super, super successful. And you still have stuff like Call of Duty and Fortnite kind of ever present. So I'm curious to see how this will go. The naming convention just sounds straight up Square Enix to me, like they X Defiant. Or
it feels like early 2000s naming with the capital X, because they would put the capital X in everything, because X gonna give it to you, I guess.
Exactly. I don't know. I'll check it out when it comes out on PlayStation. I don't think it's enough for me to want to hop in on the PC beta, but I don't know. I just felt very whelmed. Nothing about it really stood out to me being like, I need to play this game. What about you, Ryan? What are your thoughts on this?
I don't want to, again, say too many bad things about it before a game comes out, because that's kind of unfair to a game that has just been announced, obviously, but without playing it anyways. But as far as I can tell, there's nothing that really interests me about it. And especially to your point, Matt, even though I love the Tom Clancy games, because I like The Division and I like Rainbow Siege and I like Ghost Recon and I like Splinter Cell, there's nothing about what they showed me that made me kind of nostalgic in the same way that Smash Brothers, for example, or even to a lesser extent, the Nickelodeon fighting game that we talked about last week. There was nothing there that was nostalgic about it. It's I get to play as the wolves from Ghost Recon. No, please. There was nothing that that to me, even someone who really likes the Tom Clancy games, there was nothing there that even made me excited. So I'm interested to see when this comes out again. It's free to play, so it's free to play, so at least try it. And you never know that with free to play games, it's interesting because sometimes the ones that get me excited are usually the ones that let me down, and usually the ones that are kind of middling like this are the ones that actually surprise me, especially Knockout City is a perfect example, because that was a game I could not be less interested in before it came out. But then the second I started playing it, I loved it. So you never know. They might win me over with the gameplay on this one, but I'm with you. For now, I'm keeping my expectations in check and just all right, there's another free-to-play game coming from Ubisoft, and hopefully it does better than Hyperscape. That's all I got to say. All right, last news story before we go to the carpool. I Expect You to Die 2, which is a PSVR release, is coming on August 24th. Matt, I literally know nothing about this game. I saw you just added the story now, so tell me about I Expect You to Die 2.
Yeah, it literally broke as we started recording. I loved the original I Expect You to Die. For anybody who's unaware of what the game is, it's basically an escape room simulator, in VR. So you'll be planted in one spot and you have to kind of do things in a certain way. The first one had levels in in a submarine as water was filling in and you were trying to drain stuff and trying to figure your way out. There was another one where there was a giant flaming bear. They do some really, really cool stuff, and it's kind of this 007 spy feel to it. I'm really, really excited about this. I haven't outside of playing a bit of Beat Saber, I haven't really played too much VR in the last little while, but this is definitely one for a reason for me to jump back in, because the first game is stellar, and they also released a bunch of free content for it. So if you're curious at all and you still have your PSVR, I highly recommend checking out the first one and get stoked on the second one, because if it's anything like the first one, I'm sure it's
that actually sounds pretty cool. Like
I
I can imagine like an escape room simulator in VR being actually like a really cool concept. So yeah, that sounds pretty fun. Again,
yeah,
as I've talked about before, I can't really play VR games, so I know that this is not for me. But at the same time, this sounds pretty exciting. So I hope people check that out. All right, let's let some of our friends into the car with us. It is time for the carpool. If you would like your question read on the carpool, of course, every Wednesday over on Twitter, I put up a questions post asking for questions. So if you reach out to me at Ryan Turford on Twitter, we can put it there. Also, since we're now on YouTube as well, if you leave questions in the YouTube comments on this video, we'll answer them on next week's episode. So that's another avenue to get your question read. Or if you're on our Discord server, which is free to join, it's in the show notes, the link's there, and you leave us a question there in the PlayStation Drive section, we will also read it during this section as well. And we've got a couple of Discord questions here, which is why I wanted to make sure to bring that up as an option as well. So first up comes to us from Twitter at Mr. Midas at Mr. Midas Games, and he asked us 3 questions. In fact, this was the week of multiple questions, ladies and gentlemen, which I'm here for. It's very exciting. So, first question he asked us is favorite first-party PlayStation title. That's a really tough one. For me, it's Shadow of the Colossus. I think that is when I think of all-time first-party PlayStation titles, that game is still in my top 5 favorite games of all time. I love Shadow of the Colossus. I love just exploring this like desolate, like almost like post-apocalyptic environment, and then kind of wanting to learn more about, what the world was like before, this big event happened that I won't spoil for anyone who's never played Shadow of the Colossus. And really, it's just a really like sad and interesting story of you basically trying to save like the person that you love or care for. Again, it's never really explained in the story. But I love Shadow of the Colossus. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And it definitely has to be my favorite first-party title of all time. What about you, Matt?
This one's so hard. Also, what's up, Mr. Midas? Good friend of mine. I really go back and forth depending on the day. Like, I love the Uncharted series. I love The Last of Us. But the one that kind of I've been thinking more and more and more about is Spider-Man. I love what Insomniac has done with Marvel Spider-Man, and I'm going to kind of, put Miles Morales in with that. The world that they created, the fluidity of the combat and the traversal. Like, Spider-Man is my favorite comics character of all time, so having the games feel so authentically Spider-Man for the first time probably since, the Spider-Man 2 game back on like the PS2. I love the world that they created. They have the characters so figured out, and it's just, the games are just so much fun to play. And I have a blast every time that I think about, playing them, and just, I can't wait for the next one. I love Spider-Man so much. And I think that one more than anything is the one that I think about the most, especially after Miles. It's so good.
Spider-Man,
it's
incredible game. Again, it's up there definitely in like kind of my list of like all-time favorite exclusives as well, or favorite first-party games. So that's definitely a really good choice. Next up, if Sony could help remake Final Fantasy, help remake a game Final Fantasy VII style, what game would you want? I've talked about this on previous episodes of this show before, but the game I wish they would do is Legend of Dragoon. What an amazing turn-based JRPG back on the PlayStation 1. It's a beloved game. People love that game, despite the fact that it is a little bit harder to go back to it now, and the translation's kind of all over the place. But you know what? That's why it needs like that level of remake along with it, because it's a beloved game that really could shine with a new coat of paint. And again, I personally just wouldn't want to see them go down the road of maybe doing like a Final Fantasy-esque scale remake of like a newer title, or even anything after like PS2, I think. Because I think PS2 and PS1 games, people, not only do people love some of the Sony franchises but from that era, but also they're the ones that definitely need the most work, because they're the ones that haven't really held up as well. Whether it was like the developers kind of learning how to make games in 3D spaces, or issues like Legend of Dragoon where the translation wasn't 100% there, because again, localization nowadays is just so much of a different process than it was back in 1996. So I think that a lot of that's really come a long way. So I think that anything from the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 era, like even something like Ape Escape, for example, I think would be a good choice as well. But what do you think about this, Matt?
Yeah, I kind of had two answers for this one as well. I really want to see Digimon World 2 come back, or 3. I'll take either one of those. Brought back in this massive scale, make it look amazing. But I tried to also stay in like the first party wheelhouse with this. For me, I really want, and again, we've talked about this previously, but I want Infamous to come back. I would love the original to get brought back, just like, fully from the ground up, Demon Souls, Final Fantasy VII Remake style, just, make the city feel bigger. I want a couple new powers added in just to, help with traversal. I think those games are so special, and we haven't had one since, Second Son and First Light, which is, really, really sad considering how good those games were. They weren't what people wanted in comparison to the first two. So I'd love for them to bring back the original Infamous, bring back Cole, tell that story again, maybe mess around with the choices a little more. Like that game was doing so much, so innovatively at the time, and I really just want that game to shine again.
It's so good, and you're right. It's a little bit harder to go back to that one in particular versus Infamous 2, which I think actually has held up pretty well. And last question from Mr. Midas. He asks, what is your favorite PlayStation studio and why? So my favorite PlayStation studio might actually surprise people because I don't talk about racing games all that often, but one of my favorite PlayStation franchises of all time is Gran Turismo. I love the Gran Turismo series. I love all those games. So Polyphony Digital, believe it or not, is actually my favorite Sony first-party studio. Now, mind you, I might have said Sony Japan before they closed down Sony Japan, because I think Sony Japan has made so many incredible games over the years, and I think that they probably would have been my default answer before they closed. But I definitely have to give it to Polyphony Digital. I don't think they get enough credit for what they do with Gran Turismo. I think they make incredible games. They take forever to come out, which kind of sucks, because I'm kind of just sitting here waiting for Gran Turismo, the new one to basically come out and play it. But I've always really loved their games. Even when they did like other offshoots like Tourist Trophy, for example, like the motorcycle racing game. I think that they've always made solid top tier quality games. So they're my favorite PlayStation studio, which might surprise people because, obviously I could have picked Naughty Dog or Insomniac or whatever else. So, Matt, what about you? What's your favorite PlayStation first-party studio?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting call, and it's not. I always have trouble thinking of Polyphony. I've just never tried any of the Gran Turismo games, but I think that's a really, really solid pick. For myself, Naughty Dog would have been the answer a year ago, but Insomniac just keeps killing it. They keep putting out such incredible games. And we had Marvel Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and Ratchet and Clank all within the last couple of years. Like, we've had so many good games. And I think the kind of thing that really sold me on them as my favorite is the stories that were going around around the time that Ratchet and Clank came out, with a lot of developers coming forward and saying, we did little to no crunch on Ratchet. And there were similar stories around the time Miles and Spider-Man came out. It really seems like they genuinely care a lot about their employees, and they're doing what they can to make sure that, they're not suffering making the games that you enjoy playing, which, for me personally, I love hearing about that, and just makes me value what the games are even more, especially how impressive Ratchet is, how impressive Spider-Man is. I love what Insomniac's doing, not even just from a games level, but also from a studio level. So I think they're my favorite.
Makes sense. And honestly, that's a fantastic pick. It's like one of those things too, where it's like there's such a new Sony first party studio that maybe that I always just keep forgetting, or I don't think of them as a first party studio. Like, I'm always in my brain, I think of them as like a second party studio, or even like a third party still, just because again, like Sunset Overdrive is still like so fresh in my mind for me, an Xbox game, that I guess I'm not always thinking about them that way, but Insomniac, fantastic choice as well. All right, next question comes to us from Kirbyville over on Discord, and he asks, any thoughts on the slight digital PS5 redesign? Did you see any information about this, Matt? Because there's not much out there. There's like there's one less screw, I guess, in the base, and that's pretty much it. There's like very little under the hood, essentially, with this PlayStation 5 redesign. There's not much to it. What do you think about it, though?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Like, it doesn't really do anything for me either way. I really have no issues with them kind of incrementally upgrading the systems as they go until they have like a new full one to show off. Nintendo's done it with the Switch with slightly better battery life, et cetera, et cetera. I think if we have new tech and you're able to fit it in at a price point that makes sense, why not kind of help new people into the ecosystem have a slightly better thing? It doesn't bother me. I'm not like,
how dare you?
Why are they doing this when they could be focusing on something else? Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't care. I have the PS5. I love my PS5. And for somebody who's just getting into the game, if they have one different screw, then I mean, good on them. It doesn't really bother me. Let them do it. And then when the PS5 Pro or the PS5 Slim or whatever else comes out in the future, that's a great time to upgrade or do whatever else. But for new people if they're making slight changes to make the experience a little bit better, why not? I don't mind.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I think it's good, at least for the production side, because hopefully this just means that there are more PlayStation 5s coming out because of this, because I know they've talked about that's why they're doing this, is they want to make sure that to increase the number of PlayStation 5s for people to buy, because people keep wanting to buy them, and they need to kind of tweak some of the parts to do that. So yeah, I'm all for this. And then last question, or two questions, because we got two questions from the most famous of all famous Seamuses. He asks, with Cris Tales out now, what are your favorite games that involve time travel? So this was a good question because, again, first of all, time travel, I think, is a little bit of an underutilized mechanic in video games, because I think a lot more games could actually utilize time travel. Of course, the one that everyone points to is Chrono Trigger, which is the boring answer. So I'm not going to go with that as my top pick. And by the way, if you want to know kind of my full thoughts about Chrono Trigger, we did an episode about Chrono Trigger a couple weeks ago on the RPG Cave, which you'll actually find on the YouTube channel here if you want to know more about what I think about that game. But I'm going to actually go with Life is Strange. It's probably my favorite game outside of Chrono Trigger, all about time travel, because it's all about, even though you've got a lot of slight rewind in time, you're not really doing a lot of like leaping into the future or the past, although you do that a little bit, but I won't go into that. I just really loved how like time travel was a mechanic in the very first Life is Strange and how that worked into the experience. I thought it was really well done, and I liked the way it kind of affects the choice-based system. I thought that was really, really, really cool. But what about you, Matt? What's your answer to this question?
Yeah, for me, I actually really struggled with this question. Two of my probably like biggest gaming sins is I've never played Chrono Trigger and Life is Strange. Both games I've started before and for no reason whatsoever have like fell off. Like it's just a timing thing. So I really do want to play both of them. The one that came to mind for me was Prince of Persia. Just having that kind of rewind. I know it's a little bending the rules of what time travel, quote unquote, is, but that rewind ability, letting you kind of like figure things out. If you miss a jump, or if you try and, or if you mess up a fight, you have that slight about, a bit of time to go back and to rethink things through or to reevaluate. I think that series just uses it in a way. And I'm kind of surprised that we don't have more, takes on that mechanic, across gaming as a whole. But for me, Prince of Persia, like I love how they kind of made it into a mechanic rather than, being inherently part of the story. I think it's done in a really unique way.
Now, to preface this, I would say that in Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, you actually do time travel in that game, in addition to the mechanic as well. So, I mean, that could be just your default answer right there, Matt. I solved it for you.
Yeah, there you go.
But even like another game I just thought about too, when we were talking, Assassin's Creed's all about time travel too. Or I mean, pseudo time travel, because you're essentially playing through the eyes of like what's like an avatar in that time period. But essentially, it's like time travel as well with that game as well. So there you go. And last question from Famous Seamus. With the big summer sale out now on the PlayStation Store, because there's lots of games on sale at the moment, what are some of your recommendations for the sale? So I came up with a couple of examples, but I would say 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, which was one of my favorite games of last year. Just an incredible story, some fantastic characters, and just experience from top bottom. That game is a game that I know a lot of people really missed. So I think that it's definitely a game worth checking out on sale. In addition to that, I came up with Final Fantasy 14, we talked about earlier. It's on sale. You get everything up to Endwalker. I think it's like $20. So, and it comes with 30 days of free game time. So I definitely think that that's definitely worth a purchase if you've never played Final Fantasy 14. As well as the other game I'm going to go with, another Japanese game in Persona 5 Royal. It's on sale again, and everyone should play it. So go play Persona 5 Royal. Those are my three picks for the sale. But what about you, Matt?
Yeah, I actually, what a sale, man. Like I checked it out and I was kind of like, man, 13 Sentinels is one I've had my eye on for a while. So this might be the time that I finally pick it up. I also had Final Fantasy 14 and Persona 5 Royal Deluxe on my list as well. But for me, It Takes Two is fantastic if you're looking to play a game co-op with a partner or with a friend. Obviously, Spider-Man Miles Morales. Disco Elysium is one of my favorite games in the last while, and that edition is now on sale there as well, along with Judgment, if you want to get ready for Judgment 2 coming in September. And then Yakuza 7, just because it's so good. I just love what RGG Studios does. And the last one, a game that I really, really enjoy is the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater remake. Those games are done so well and way too much fun. The soundtracks are so good and the remakes are just handled so carefully. So those would be my recommendations. And thanks to you, Ryan, I'm going to probably go check out 13 Sentinels because that's one I had my eye on for a while.
Very nice. Yeah, that game is incredible, and I'm so glad you're going to finally be checking that out. But Matt, we got to go. But before Matt plugs go.
Yeah, you can find me over at youtube.com/burnoutbrighter. We are going to be announcing everything for our 100th episode giveaway next week. To give you a little hint, we may have some games coming from Freedom Games. We might have some games coming from Ubisoft, maybe some stuff from PlayStation. We have a bunch of really cool stuff in the works, so come check us out there. And you can find me on Twitter at burnout_Matt.
Very nice, my friend. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/YumiCapri, as well as on podcast feeds around the globe. So for Matt Lewinsky, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been episode 10 of the PlayStation Drive, and we're out.